Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi fi kulli lahazatin abada adada ni'amillahi wa afdalihi. Allahumma atina min ladunka rahmah wa alimna min ladunka ilma subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nawayna ta'alluma wa ta'lim wa tadhakkura wa tazkir والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني ما شب صافي الهني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم لدني ما شب صافي الهني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم لدني وما شب صافي الهني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم ألهمنا علما نفقه به أمرك ونواهيك وارزقنا فهما نعرف به كيف نناجيك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين في عافية يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أغننا بالعلم وزينا بالحلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم إنا نستودعك ما قرأناه وما نقرأه في هذا المجلس وما قبله وما بعده فاحفظه علينا حتى ترده إلينا وقت احتياجنا إليه يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أكرمنا بالنور الفهم وأخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وافتح لنا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا حكمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم يا من مقاليد الأمور كلها بيده وإليه يرجع الأمر كله يا فتاح يا عليم يا فتاح يا عليم يا فتاح يا عليم افتح علينا فتحا قريبا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري وحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وسدد لساني واهدي قلبي وافعل كذلك بأحبابي أبدا وارزقنا كمال فتوح العارفين والفقه في الدين مع كمال إخلاص واليقين والعافية والغنى والنصر والحفظ والنفع والاندفاع وخيرات الدارين وعلوم الأولين والآخرين. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. We are continuing with our lesson. The last time round we were at Zakat, right? We started Zakat, inshallah. Okay, we're continuing with our lesson. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Min kitab, and we're coming into, I think we are inshallah to go into Hajj today, right? So that we don't have to, so that we can finish on time lah. Inshallah, we can finish on time our classes. Okay. All right, Bismillah. Okay, so last week we were discussing about zakat, right? And we finished with the going to the nisab, right, about zakat, and to understand how do we calculate zakat, right? So we have finished fasting and we have finished zakat. So inshallah we're going into I'll be doing the second part of zakat also, because zakat is quite a chapter, quite a big chapter. But as mentioned, we will just go into zakat that is relevant to our context in Singapore, right? If you do find that you're going into other types of zakat, then you just learn lah. And this is the beauty, about our religion, that it is only on you to learn what is compulsory, right? So what is not compulsory on the individual, there is a fardu kifaya about it, right? Whereby there are scholars who actually learn these things, right? But for most of us, we never get involved, with regards to, for example, mining, right? So most of us, unless you have a mining business, unless you have a business in searching for gold and silver, mining, then you will have to look into the zakat of mining, which is basically similar to the zakat of money, which is 2.5%, and there is an nisab as well. And also, but the thing about mining is this, that at that point in time you gain all that wealth. Same thing about finding buried treasure, which most people will not get your hands involved in this ever in your life. High chances you will not stumble across upon buried treasure. And then this buried treasure has to be treasure that was buried before the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So if you were to stumble upon treasure somehow or other, first and foremost, the treasure must be above the nisab, right? For you to even think about it being zakat. So like if you just come across like a golden chain, for example, or a gold earring or a gold necklace along the beach, right? You will not call that treasure, but you call it lost and found, right? Because high chances, right, that gold was dropped there recently, right? Not 1,000 years ago, right? But high chances that it was just someone dropped it there recently, so it will fall under lost and found, right? And the laws of lost and found in Islam, mashallah. So as mentioned, that for zakat, a lot of it is really not not for us to, it's not for us to get involved with. I went into the entire zakat of money. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me just read the text. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. From the chapter on zakat. وأما الزكاة وهي رابع أركان الإسلام فيجب على المسلم معرفة أنواع الأموال الواجبة فيها وهي النعم. And we mentioned na'am, right? So zakat is the fourth pillar of Islam. Therefore, every Muslim must know the types of possessions on which it is compulsory to pay zakat, right? So beyond these possessions, there is no zakat, right? So zakat is only on these specific possessions. And the first one is a na'am, right, which is basically livestock, and then gold and silver, which we went through the last lesson, trade goods, tijara, which I'm going to go through in this lesson, because this is where we are involved in. Buried treasure, rikas, which most likely will not be involved with. Gold and silver mines also, high chance we're not going to be involved in this as well, right? And mu'asharat, right? Mu'asharat will be crops, right? So crops farming, right? So if also as Singaporeans, high chances we're not going to be involved in this as well, right? Unless you own a farm somewhere in the world, right? And then you would basically have to look for zakat, to care about the zakat of your farm. If you're growing some plants in your house, or even if you consume these plants, this is not zakat, right? Because it will not reach a nisab anyway. And then nisab is a substantial amount, and also it's specifically on certain types of they call it seed crops, but basically staple food, right? Seed crops basically staple food like rice and barley, the kind of crops whereby or wheat, right? Wheat, rice, barley, these are all staple kind of food, right? Whereby you have zakat on these foods because they can be dried up and they can be kept, right? The fruits only include tamar, right, which is dates, and raisins, right? Because fruits that can be kept for a long period of time, dates and raisins. Beyond that, all the other fruits are not counted, right? So even if someone were to say, oh, but I can dry my apricots, I can dry my apricots and keep it, for a long period of time, or now our industry has come to the point whereby we can actually have a long shelf life for a lot of our fruits, because of all these chemical additions. Doesn't matter, right? The fruits that we only ever talk about for zakat will only and ever be dates and raisins, and no other fruits is involved. Of course, if someone has a business in selling fruits, then now their zakat falls under their business, right? So it will be under business, right? So, and then there will be the ruling of business, right? So, and there is no zakat on animals other than livestock grazing animals on public land. We mentioned this last time round, right? It has to be, and it's just for us to appreciate the entire wisdom behind zakat, right? That only animals that graze on no man's land, right? So only animals that graze on, they call it free pasture, right? Free pasture on no man's land, right? Then these animals, they are up for zakat because the animals are growing fat, and the animals are consuming of the wealth of the people, because the land belongs to the public, right, to the people, right? But if your animals consume the grass on your bought piece of land, the land belongs to you, there is absolutely no zakat, right, on these animals at all, no matter how many you have, as long as the animals consume and they are fattened, right, they're fattened up on your wealth, right? So same thing with uh, animals that are used for that are used for labor, right? Animals that are used for labor also no zakat on them. Same thing also when you speak about plants, right? So the plants, if you water your own plants, then there is still zakat, right? But you give 5%, right? But if your plants are being watered by the environment, right, by the rain and by the floods and by the rivers in the environment, and not of your doing nor your own irrigation practices, right, then the zakat that you have to pay on it is 10%, right? Because you're taking a lot from the land, and whatever rizki Allah has given to a land, it is for the people of the land, right? So if some people take more, then some people have less, and then zakat basically evens out, what other people lack in what they don't get, right, with regards to the rizki of the land, which is why it is there is a ruling as well that zakat that is earned from a land is to be given back to the people of that particular land, right? So if you earn the money, in Singapore, then the people of Singapore have the most right to getting your zakat, right? They have the most right, the people of Singapore, right? Because you earn the money from this land, the land of Singapore, right? So or you earn the wealth from this land of Singapore, right? So the people of Singapore have the most right to getting the zakat, right, from the wealth that is earned on this land of Singapore, right? So there is which is why usually if people ask to give zakat overseas, right, usually there is our scholars will say, handle your people first, right? Because in our land there are a lot of poor. There are a lot of poor in our land, right? So sometimes you want to give overseas because we see what they're going through, and of course you feel a lot of pity for the people overseas and the struggle there. But actually in our own land there are people who are faqir, they who are faqir and miskin in Singapore itself, right? So we need to actually look into our land first, right, before we look outside of our land. And every land is that way. Not to say you can't give zakat outside, you can. With regards to the fatwa that is on it, you can give zakat outside, right? But of course, they will always say, try, handle your land first, right? Handle the people of your land first, because the wealth was earned on this land, and the land of Singapore. Now, Allahu Alam, Allah knows best, right? So we went through all of this last time round. The precondition of the zakat being obligatory is the passing of the 1 lunar year, which I went through last 2 weeks ago, which is also a condition for money and trade goods. Another condition is that they reach a nisab, which we also went through also the last time round. The lower limit above which zakat becomes obligatory or fard. Okay, so today I'm going to go into the amount to be about trade goods. Okay, about trade goods. So the amount to be paid on money and trade goods is 2.5%. The same thing on crops and fruits grown by irrigation. Zakat is 5%. If the land is not irrigated, meaning it's from the environment, then it is 10%. We went through a little bit of the animals previously, so I will not be going through that. So with regards to zakat on trade goods, zakat on trade goods. Okay, so basically business. And it is important because many people especially in our time, we actually go into businesses, especially home businesses. And so we need to be aware, if we have zakat to pay, right, on our home businesses, right? So with regards to home businesses, right, what is looked at, right, is that we do not look at a howl, right? We do not, right, look at the wealth being kept for a full, Hijri year, right? But we only look, is very important, at the accounts at the end of the financial year. Okay, of course, this makes sense, right? Because you're doing business, you should not be expecting to keep your wealth throughout the entire Hijri year. And what is the wealth, right? The wealth when it comes to business, right? The wealth is basically the overall value, the overall selling value of your goods. Okay, the overall selling value of your goods. That is the wealth that you are holding, right? So, for example, if I'm selling shoes, okay, I have a shoe shop, I'm selling shoes, right? So, no matter what price I gain the shoes at, no matter what price I buy the shoes at, I'm only looking at the selling price of my shoes, right? So, if like in Singapore right now, right, the value of my shoes will be the selling price of my shoes. So even if I bought my shoes from Indonesia and it cost me like $5 per pair of shoe, and I bought, maybe I bought 1,000 shoes from Indonesia, right? So I spent 5,000 Singapore dollars on my 1,000 shoes to sell it in Singapore. Right? But in Singapore, I sell each pair for $30, right? For example. Right? So I buy $5 in Indonesia. This happens a lot. And many people go into tijara, they go into businesses to earn some money without even thinking that there is zakat in there. And then they go year after year without even realizing they actually owe zakat. They go year after year because they just keep, especially if your goods are not perishable, or your goods are non-perishable goods. So technically, you can just keep them. You can just keep all these goods in your home or in your shop, wherever you keep them. And then year after year, right, they don't actually look into their shop and see what's the zakat to be paid, right, by the value of the goods that's in the shop, right? So so for example, so we're looking at the overall selling value of your goods. I'm going to give an example to illustrate this better, right? Because with examples, then things become clear, right? So basically, what I'm saying is that so for example, on the 1st of Muharram, let me just put an example. Okay, so for example, let me just put Zainab lah. Zainab has a shoe business. Okay, right. So on the 1st of Muharram, right? So, and whenever you begin your business, the 1st of Muharram, right? She bought. Okay, let's solve a maths problem, no problem sum. But basically, it's what zakat is, right? You have to figure out your problems with regards to money. You got to figure out how much zakat you got to give. Right? So she bought 1,000 pairs, right, of shoes, right, from Indonesia, right, with the intention, right, of business, tijara. Right? There has to be an intention, because sometimes you acquire wealth without any intention of business. Right? It's possible. Right? So, like for example, maybe someone inherited, a whole load of clothes, right, from their grandmother, for example, and she has like really good clothes, like really good high end, high quality clothing that she has. And so, for example, someone were to inherit, a whole lot of clothes from their grandmother. Is her wealth, and it's inherited, by someone. So at the point of inheritance, it could be that you didn't think much about it. You didn't think much about the clothing that you inherited. Then maybe, after a few months, someone says to you, you inherited all that money, all that clothing from your grandmother. You can very well sell it. You could sell and get money from this. Right? And then so you're like, oh, really? And you look into it, and you begin to take pictures and you put it online, right? And then you begin a business. Right? So the moment you intend, right, to actually sell this clothing that you inherited, from your grandmother, right, now you've begun a business, of selling the clothing. And if it's really high-end clothing, very easily it will be above the nisab, right? Very easily. Right. So if it's like, if she has like 20 pieces of clothing, and each piece of clothing is like $500, for example, you're selling, like really high-end, very good, rare pieces of clothing. If you're selling each piece for 500, if you have like 20 pieces, you are very easily, it's already 10,000 that you can earn. Right. So very easy, the value of your goods are above the nisab very easily. The thing about tijara is that the value of our goods very quickly go above nisab. That's why it is important for us to be aware. Right? Do we have zakat on tijara? Right. So don't like go year after year, and then you don't realize that you actually have zakat on your tijara. Right? So for me, like personally, when I printed my books, Zainab Fatimah Zahra, it didn't occur to me. It didn't occur to me that actually, right now, I can't just keep the books year after year, right? But I actually have to sell the books, Otherwise, I have to calculate and see if it's above it's above the nisab. It's not above the nisab, it's below the nisab. Alhamdulillah, the day I checked after teaching zakat, and I was like, I have goods, because it never occurred to me that I'm doing tijara. It should never occurred to me that I'm doing tijara. When it occurred to me, actually I'm doing tijara. I have books that I sell. Right. So even right now, when I print out Mujahid, primary school books, right now these books are my property. Right. So these books that I printed out, I had to sell primary 6 books is a lot of money put in to print out the books. Right. But I'm not even looking at the money that I put in. I'm looking at the value of all of the books. If per book is an amount, of dollars, then I'm going to multiply by number of books in my possession, and I'm going to see that how much zakat do I have to give out, if I keep it for a year. Right? Not keep for a year, but at the end of a financial year. So whenever I intended to begin my tijara, right, that is when my financial year begins. Right. So at the end of the financial year, right, no matter what, I have to go and look at my goods and see what is the value at the end of the financial year, regardless of what happened during the year. It's regardless of what happened during the year. You only see what happens at the end of the financial year, right? So, for example, let me say, the Zainab, she got on the 1st of Muharram, she bought 1,000 pairs of shoes from Indonesia with the intention of business, right? So, if she is going to, so the value of her shoes, right, the value of these, or the selling value, and the selling. So you're going by selling price, not by cost price, but by selling price. The selling value, right, of these shoes. Right, so maybe if she's selling it for $30 per pair, that means the selling value of the shoes is 30,000 Singapore dollars. Right, because she's gonna sell 30 each pair for $30. So even though she said no, but I bought the shoes for $5 each, so 5 times 1,000 is 5,000. That's below the nisab. Right? No, you're selling it for $30 each. Right? So you're looking at the selling value, and it only makes sense, right? Because that's the value of the shoes. Right? And also, it also makes sense because if, let's say, you bought something for a whole lot of money, then if the market were to crash, if the market were to go down, then you're forced to sell all these things at a cheaper price. So of course, again, your zakat is on the selling price. Right? So, right, for example, if someone spent, like $10,000, buying clothing to sell, and then they realize that it's not making it, that no one's buying the clothing, and they spend 10,000 on the clothing, right? So they say, okay, I'm going to sell the clothing for $2 each. Just like lelong lah, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to sell it for $2 each, right? So in them doing so, right now the value of their goods have now gone down significantly, and there's no more zakat for this person, because it would be difficult on people. Right? If their businesses were to crash, and then they have to pay zakat on the cost price, right? That's very hard on people, right, to do that. But the zakat is always on the selling price, right? So if your business, is lucrative, your business is mashallah, is growing, the zakat's on the selling price, right, not on the cost price, right? Similarly, if your business is failing, then it makes more sense that the zakat is on the selling price and not on the cost price. Zakat really, mashallah, you'll be amazed by your zakat and the price. And again, is on the end of we're saying at the overall selling value, of your goods at the end of the financial year. You're looking at the end of the financial year, right? So at the 1st of Muharram, right? Let me just put a year there, 1444, right? She bought this is it our year this year, or 1443. We're on 1443, right? So I forgot what year we're on, right? So basically, she bought this number of shoes from Indonesia. The selling value of the shoes is 3,000. Right, through the year, she sells her shoes. Right, so she sells the shoes very quickly. They laku lah, basically, right? There's a demand for her shoes, right? So throughout the year, right, so till maybe, let me just say, Muharram, Safar, Rabiul Awal, Rabiul Akhir, Jamul Awal, Jamul Akhir, Rajab. Okay, let's say with Rajab. Right, so in Rajab, right, she sells off all, right, her shoes. Okay, so gone. All the shoes sold. Right, 1,000 pairs all sold. Right, all have turned into money. Right, her shoes have all now turned into money. Okay, so now with this 30,000 that she has in her hands, she sold her shoes, right? And I hope you're following my discussion. because I know zakat can be very technical, but I really want to do this part on tijara, because a lot of people go into tijara and they don't actually, tijara meaning business, and they don't actually look into their zakat, right? So it's unfortunate, especially when they have non-perishable goods. Perishable goods, you're forced to sell it off, right? Because they're perishable. But if it's non-perishable, I just give a like a heads up to my brother, because he sells honey, and honey can be kept for a very long time. Right. So if let's say he were to buy honey, and but he said, oh, but he spent less than the nisab. I say, it's not how much you spend, it's how much you're selling it. Right. So if you buy honey from Yemen, at an amount, and then you're gonna bring your honey to Singapore, and then you're gonna put up the price because of Singapore, because of the demand in Singapore and the price of honey in Singapore. Then you got to calculate how much honey is in your possession, and like at the end of your financial year, you got to see, is your honey above the selling value of your honey, is it above the nisab or not? I'd be very careful if you're doing tijara, if you're doing business. So people who are doing, like people us, they're doing cake business and whatsoever. Usually for cake business, like home bakery, all that, usually you don't keep the goods for long because they are perishable, right? So even your flour, right, the flour is perishable. So usually you don't keep for an entire year, right? And such. But basically be very, aware, of the value, the selling value of all of these things. So for example, she sells all her shoes, right? Then, right, she buys, right, new shoes, right, to sell, right? So her financial year has now restarted. Her financial year has restarted in Rajab. Okay, her financial year restarted. Okay, so if let's say, so now, so right, by the next Rajab, so now not Muharram anymore, but by Rajab, by the next Rajab, right, Rajab, okay, so throughout the year, so from this Rajab, right, to the next Rajab, right, she actually, I never sells off all her shoes, right, but she just keeps buying more shoes. Okay, so in Rajab, she finished selling all the shoes. She bought, with the money, she bought more shoes. Okay, so now she's selling her shoes. She never actually, finishes her stock, right? But she would just buy more, right? So she buys more through the year. She buys more through the year. She buys more. She never actually clears her stock, right? So by the next Rajab, right, buy more shoes, as she goes through the year. So she buys, she sells, she buys, she sells, she buys, she sells, right? So by the next Rajab, okay, so by the next Rajab, right, she needs to look at her stock, right, that is present. So we don't care about whether it was there the entire year. We don't care. Right? For tijara, you don't care for the wealth to be there the entire year. You don't care. You just look at the end of the financial year. So the end of the financial year, because you see, if you have to keep track of your stock the whole year, it's really a big headache. I have said at the end of the financial year, look at the stock that is present and calculate, right, the value, right, the selling value, right, value of the stock, right, present. Okay, if this amount is above the nisab, then she has to pay zakat, right? If the amount is below the nisab, then there is no zakat. It's as simple as that. Okay, that's all. Okay, that's all for tijara. Okay, very simple, tijara, not hard at all. Inshallah simple. Right, there's some questions here. So if someone were to say, if let's say you forgot the dates when you started your trading, there's a thing lah. There's a thing that you need to be aware. Right? There's a thing about Islam. Whatever you get into, you must learn the hukum first. Right? Whatever you want to get into, you must learn the hukum first. Right? Then you can get into it. And this is the danger, you would say, that many people go into all kinds of things and they don't learn the rulings, right, behind it. So many people start off a home business and then they don't even study and learn, is there zakat about this? What am I doing? Is there zakat? am I just selling honey or selling bukhur or selling, all kinds of things? Is there zakat on what I'm doing? Subhanallah. And so if let's say I know when my financial year began, for example, if I'm Zainab and I know that my financial year is now in the Rajab, then as I get closer towards the Rajab, from Jumadal Awal, Jumadal Thaniya, when I get closer towards the Rajab, I will not stock up. I will not stock up. I will let my goods, get sold off, right? Because I know my financial year is coming to an end, and so I have to calculate my zakat based on what's in my stock at the end of my financial year. After my financial year has come to an end, if I want to stock up my goods, I may do so. Right. So basically, this be the zakat teaches you to be money clever or money smart. Right. So you don't have stock year in and year out. You don't just keep stock, in your business year after year. You're a lousy businessman, right? If you're doing that, right? But you need to clear the zakat forces you to actually clear stock, right, as you go year after year, and that is what Allah has taught us about good business. You actually clear stock year after year. Someone might think, oh, I keep stock, it's a good thing. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is teaching us through zakat, right, that you actually clear your stock. Right? Year after year, you should be clearing stock and getting new stock, right, into your business. There should be a flow of stock, right, through your business. That is a sign that you are earning, and your business is lucrative, that there is flow of goods, right, through your business, right? So if you forgot the day that you started, you need to try and find some way, right? So for example, if you already invested and you bought a lot of money, you bought a lot of goods, right? Usually you will see this in your bank account. You will see this drop in savings in your bank account, right? Or you will see this drop in your in the money that is in your business. Usually, or you can remember, like for example, Zainab, she remembers when she went to Indonesia. Right? So she remembered the point where she went to Indonesia and she came back with the shoes. Right. So basically, you need to figure out when you began your trading, and then if you really can't figure out, then give it like a good estimate. So like that in Ramadan you had this clothing that you were selling because of Shawwal, because of Hari Raya, you were selling some clothing, right? So in Ramadan you had the clothing already, right? So you can kind of give it a good guess. Probably you bought it in Sha'ban, right? Probably it was bought in Sha'ban or it was bought in Rajab, right? So you can figure it out, right? You need to figure it out, because business is not something that happens without you realizing, right? You have to realize when you actually get into business, right? It's work, right? It's a job. So you won't that person, it happened to me. I didn't realize I entered into business, right? But it does. But you need to figure out, like, when do you spend, because business requires like a capital. So you actually spend like a huge amount of money, to begin a business, right? So usually it will not go past you, right, when you spend that money to begin your business, right? So right. So someone asked a question here, right? For the question, means that if my goods did not sell, there's no demand for my goods, and I keep all of them, I have to pay zakat for all of these goods in my possession, at selling price? Depends. So you see, good question, for this one. So let's say, for example, I bought a whole lot of clothing from Indonesia. Okay. So I thought, okay, I could sell them for a price in Singapore. Then it so happens nobody wants to buy them. Right. So there is no demand for my clothing that I bought. Okay, if at this point in time I say to myself, you know what, I'm just gonna keep them. I don't want to sell them anymore. I just want to keep them. So based on my intention, I have stopped my tijara. I have stopped my business. Right? So at this point, I'm no longer engaged in business. I'm not doing any business anymore. Right. So I said to myself, you know what? I just want to keep all this clothing, or I want to give them out in charity. I don't want to be responsible for this goods anymore. Right. So at that point in time, so just as how when I intend to do business, my financial year begins. When I stop intending business, then my business ended. I'm no longer doing business anymore, right? But I just, right now, I just want to just, give it away, or I want to keep. all this clothing. So is there zakat on me? No, because you're not doing business. There's no more business. You just own a lot of clothes. That's all. Or you just give out a lot of clothes in charity. There's no more business, in the clothing that you're holding. You understand? Right? So it really goes back to your intention. It really goes back to your intention. The moment you intend that these goods are, and you can't fake it. You can't fake it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, okay, I will only intend business for a while, then I'm not going to intend business. You can't fake it, because somebody would come up to you and say to you, can I buy some of your clothing? If you're going to sell it, that means you are in business. You are in business. Right? But if someone comes up to you and says to you, can I buy some of your clothing? And you say, oh, it's not for sale, but if you want, I can give you some. Then you're not in business. All right. So you got to be, of course, it's zakat. It's zakat. You cannot fake it if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. So about perishables, high chances it's not going to go beyond the year. Right? High chances you should be selling your perishables through the year. I can't think of when you would keep the perishables for more than a year. Right. I mean, most high chances the butter will be used if you're selling cakes. Right, the butter is used, the flour will be used. Right, your goods move. They actually move right through the year. You get it? And a lot of people actually, in fact, when they do home businesses, you actually have months whereby you take a break from your business. Right, so you kind of finish off selling whatever you sell, then you kind of take a break. That's good. That's a good thing to do, because it breaks the financial year. Right, so you kind of like stop, and then you clear the stock, and you should be doing that. Zakat teaches you to do that, to clear stock, right? So that you don't actually have to fork out zakat year after year. So zakat is really, mashallah, there's so much divine wisdom when it comes to zakat. Okay. Okay, the question here, what if I find that my goods were not making it, so I intend to no longer be in business, and then suddenly I see got demand. After some time, I saw that actually this goods got demand, right? You can restart your financial year. You can restart your financial year if you want to, but it has to be sincere lah. It to be sincere, right? So you can sell. Just change your intention lah. Just change your intention. Now you can sell. You can change your intention, go back into business. So the moment you go back to business, you are already in the financial year itself. Okay, so just be very careful about that, about zakat. So I hope that one answered the questions about zakat. So if any of you are involved in any form of business, right, then please be very, very vigilant. Be very careful that you might have zakat that you have to pay. With regards to the goods that you are keeping in your possessions. Now, okay. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Right. So so what do you have to give out when with regards to trade goods? 2.5%. Right. So 2.5% of your of the value of your goods at the end of a financial year, and not there is no haul. There is no haul, but is at the end of the financial year. Right. There is no haul with regards to this. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, there's no question. We're going to go into zakat fitr. Right, so zakatul fitri, right, it is compulsory, wajibatun ala kulli muslim iza fadulat an qutihi wa quti man yaqutuhu yawm al-eid wa laylatahu arba'atu amdadin bimuddin nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa tajibu an-niyyatu fil jami'. Naam. I feel jami' it is obligatory for one to make niyat or intention, right, in all zakat payments. Right, all zakat payments you must have niyat. Right, so if there was no niyat, then when zakat is given, and think about giving out zakat, right? Please ensure that the people that you're giving out zakat to, they are valid recipients of zakat. Right? Don't just anyhow give out zakat to people without checking with them, are they valid recipients of zakat. Don't do that, because there's sometimes there was once I just got, I had an event. Then I had like like a packet of money put into my hands, and I didn't even see who it was. I didn't know who gave it to me. There was, because a lot of people who were there, and then the people salam you and everything. Right, so people tend to put money in your hands when they shake your hands. Right, but luckily I was usually I don't look at it, But this time, Allah made me look at it, and I saw on the package there was the word zakat, right? And it was like a few $100 in there, and I have no clue who gave it to me, no clue whatsoever. Because people just come and just pass, come and pass, come and pass. Don't do that. Right? Don't do that. Zakat is zakat. It's not sedekah, it's not hadiah, it's zakat. It's not charity, it's not gift, it's zakat. Zakat needs to be placed in the correct hands. I don't just give people zakat without asking them, can they receive zakat, or are they collecting zakat? I don't just give people. Right? It's stressful for me. Right? So then I, of course, then I have no idea who is the one who gave me the zakat. I don't even know how to ask. Like, it's just like those kind of big events where you don't even know who comes. Like hundreds of people come, subhanallah. So I had to basically consult with my teachers about it, and they said there's no choice, but we just have to just give out on behalf of the person, and just assume that the person gave me did a wakil on me to be her wakil, to give out her zakat, to represent her in giving out her zakat. So I just assumed that she just did that without telling me anything. I just put zakat in my hands. Don't do that. I don't do that. Always ensure that the zakat that you give out, it goes to correct hands, and ensure that the people who are taking the zakat, right, they are, first and foremost, if they are taking the zakat for themselves, that it is legitimate, right? That means they can, it is valid, right? Them taking zakat, then your zakat counts, right? If you give your zakat to someone who's who is not valid for them to take zakat, then your zakat would just fall as sedekah. It's charity. It's not zakat, and you have not paid your zakat. You must give zakat to the people who can take the zakat. Right? So just ensure that it's your responsibility, right, to ensure that you're giving zakat to those, right, who can receive zakat. Of course, if they lie and whatsoever, it's on them lah. Right? But it's your responsibility to ensure that you give zakat out correctly. Okay. Right. So here zakat fitr. Zakat fitri, it has to be paid by every Muslim who possesses more than his actual needs and the needs of his dependents on the day of Eid and the evening preceding it. Right. So not preceding it, right, but that comes after it. Right, after it. Right. So it is it is a day of Eid and the night. So it's not, you will not say the night of Raya, the night of Eid, but is the night that comes after. Okay, the night that comes after, right? So of course, if someone has enough to sustain themselves and their families for the 24 hours, right? It's 24 hours at the day of Eid till the night that comes after the day of Eid, right? If you have enough to sustain your family, then you need to pay zakat fitri, right? So zakat fitri, so you see that really the poorest of the poor don't pay zakat fitri. The poorest of the poor, right? Because they cannot even have enough to survive one day. Very few people are in that position whereby you don't even have enough to survive one day, of expenditure for your family, for the one that you would are responsible over, and yourself. Most people, you have enough to survive for one day, right, of expenditure, right? So in this situation, zakat fitri, let me just put it here, right? So it is compulsory on every Muslim, right? So every Muslim meaning like male, right, right, or female, doesn't matter, child or adult, doesn't matter, sound mind, right, or no sound mind. Okay, so in other parts of Islam, in our rulings, usually there has to be baligh aqil. You have to be, of puberty, and you have to have a sound mind. Right? For zakat, and for all of zakat, not just zakat fitri, but all of zakat. All of zakat, there is no condition on the person. The person can be a child, can be an adult, can be sound mind, no sound mind, can be a slave, can be a free person, right? All these people, right, if they qualify to pay zakat, then they must pay zakat, right? So it's compulsory on every Muslim, right, who was alive for a portion of Ramadan and Shawwal of the same year. Right? That is why it is the sunnah to actually pay the zakat, fitri, in the morning of Eid. Of course, you can pay any time in Ramadan, and just if you don't want to be stressed out, you can pay any time in Ramadan. Right? But there is a there is a practice of doing it in the morning of Eid, right? Because it only becomes wajib on you if you are alive for the portion of Ramadan and for the portion of Shawwal. Right? So if, let's say, for example, someone were to pass away in Ramadan and did not actually live to see Shawwal, they passed away in Ramadan. Many people actually pass away in Ramadan. Right? So for this person, there is no zakat for that person. There is no zakat fitri for that person. Right? So if that person had paid already in the early part of Ramadan, maybe in the first week of Ramadan, they paid their zakat, it will be charity for them. There is no wajib zakat for them because they didn't live to see the Shawwal of that particular year. Okay, I hope you understand that. Right. So similarly, like if a woman was pregnant, right, and then she gave birth, but after the azan of Maghrib, on the 1st of Shawwal. Right, so she was pregnant throughout, Ramadan, and she gave birth on the 1st of Shawwal. After the azan of Maghrib, the child came out of her, and the child only saw Shawwal. The child was never outside of her in Ramadan. Right? So the child has no zakat on the child. But if, let's say, she gave birth before the azan of Maghrib, she gave birth after Asar, for example, the child came out of her at Asar time. And then when na'uzubillah, right, maybe the child was not well, the child was sick, and after the azan of Maghrib on the same day, so the child came out at Asar and then passed away at Maghrib, or passed away at Isha. So on the same day, in a few hours, the child passed away. May Allah protect us from and having to go through these kind of things. Right? But if it happens to someone, the child was actually alive for a part of Ramadan, and the child was alive for a part of Shawwal. Right? So the child has zakat on him. Right? So the father must pay lah. The father must pay the zakat for the child. Because the child has met a part of Ramadan, and the child has met a part of Shawwal of the same year. Okay, right. So this is for zakat fitrah. It's actually easy, mashallah. You pay 4 mud. The mud is a full hand of grain of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in our time that we follow the fatwa of being able to give cash, right? So instead of giving mud, right, we give cash. Instead of giving grain, like there is a fatwa in our time that allows for the giving of cash. Right? So we do give money in Ramadan, right? And you need to give your zakat, right, before the Eid prayer in Shawwal. And the 1st of Shawwal, before the Eid prayer, you need to give your zakat. You are given till the end of the Eid day to pay your zakat. So even if you don't pay it, before the prayer, you're given till the end of the day to pay zakat. If, let's say, for example, someone forgot about it, or you assume that your husband was going to do it, or you assume your father was going to do it, and then you realize that your father didn't do it for you, right? And then your zakat was not paid, right? So you can just go and quickly pay, right, the zakat for yourself. Can a woman pay a zakat? Can a woman pay zakat for herself? The answer is yes. Right? She can pay zakat for herself. Of course, her wali, the man who is in charge of her, pays the zakat for her, right? But if she wants to pay for herself, then by all means, there's no issue of her paying by herself, up to her if she wants to, right? But the responsibility is on the man that is responsible over her. Right? So in this case, it would be her husband or her father, right, who is responsible over her. But if she wants to pay for herself, she's working adult, she wants to pay for herself, up to her. Right? It's not an issue at all, right, for her to pay for herself. Similarly, with a lot of things, a lot of expenditure that Allah did not make it compulsory on women to pay for themselves at all. Right? There's no compulsion on women to do that. Right? But if a woman wants to help her husband out, by all means, it becomes charity for her. Mashallah, she wants to help her father out, by all means, become charity for her. Right? So same thing with zakat. She wants to pay her own zakat, up to her. Right? Really up to her, if she wants to. But just tell her father lah. Tell her father, so there's no double payment. Tell her father that I'm paying my own zakat. I want to pay my own zakat. Okay, up to her if she really wants to. Right? There is no mani'. There is nothing that is stopping her, right, from doing that. Naam. Okay, so it is obligatory to make your intention, right, when you give out in zakat. Alhamdulillah. Okay, all right, so intention is required for all the above mentioned types of zakat. It is not permissible to give zakat or zakat fitr except to a Muslim who is characterized by one of the 8 characteristics, basically one of the asnaf. They must be of the asnaf. Being poor or destitute person, not a Hashimi or Muttalibi, these are from the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Nor their freed slaves, right? And it's necessary to pay to all of these groups, right? Whatever groups is present in your country, right? So whatever is the group that is the groups that are present in your country, then for you to pay zakat to these people. So the eight asnaf, right? The 8 asnaf is found in the ayat in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. So the eight groups, the 8 groups, right, of people, right, who can receive zakat. Okay, who are these 8 groups? And these 8 groups is basically for zakat of wealth and zakat of zakat of fitr. Right, so zakat fitr and zakat wealth, same 8 groups, and you can give the zakat to. Right, so so the group, the first one is the faqir. Right, the faqir, right, is basically the definition of faqir is a person who does not have wealth, right, no earnings to enough, that is enough to survive, there is enough to cover Afwan, right, to cover half of what he needs, right, to survive, right, in that land. Okay, that is faqir. Someone who does not have enough wealth or earnings that is enough to cover half of their needs, in that land. So for example, in Singapore, for example, if you say, okay, for someone to survive in Singapore, right, so per month, like we go by month because it's how we earn our money, right, by month. But of course, in other countries, if it's by day, then it's by day, right? So if it's by month, in Singapore, if your rental, the cheapest, so you rent the cheapest, room, right, in Singapore, maybe 500, right, but maybe it's very cheap, room. So 500 for lodging, then food, right, if you really, take what is minimal, then maybe food for the month, if you put it at Singapore at $5 a day, for example, $5 a day for food altogether, maybe you put it in that amount, right? So over 30 days, $5 a day, that will come up to be 600, right? So 600 dollars, and then plus the lodging is 500,001, right? 1,001. Then maybe transportation, you need your phone for your work, you need to earn some money, whatsoever, right? So maybe in Singapore, right, you would say that what someone would need to survive in Singapore would be 2,005, for example, 2,005 to survive in Singapore. Okay, so what is half of that? So half of that would be 1,000. So maybe easier 2,000, right, to survive in Singapore. So half of that is 1,000. Right, so if someone were to earn less than 1,000, in a month, and they are supporting themselves, right? There's nobody who's supporting you. You're supporting yourself, right? So, and you pay for your lodging, you pay for everything. Right? So if you're earning less than what you need to survive the month, then you are called faqir. You are called faqir. You don't even earn half of what you need, right? So the miskin, right? The miskin, right, is someone who, right? So it's a person who does not have enough wealth or earnings, but more than half, right? Less than what they need. There is enough. There is not that. Not there is enough to cover, right, what he needs. Okay, what he needs to survive in that land, right? But he has more than half, right? So basically, you need 2,000 in Singapore to survive every month. For example, I'm giving an example. Right, so 2,000 per month to survive in Singapore. So a faqir earns less than 1,000, right? And he's supporting his entire self, right? A miskin earns more than 1,000 but less than 2,000. So not enough to survive in the land, but more than half of what it takes to survive in the land. That is called fakir and miskin. But here there's a difference. There's the main difference between fakir and miskin. Right? So usually we have our own authorities, right, who can figure out who is a fakir and who's a miskin in our land, in Singapore. I'm just going to put all 8 down. I have fakir, you have miskin, you have the amilin, right, the zakat collector, right? So he also gets a wage or a payment, right? He can take zakat. Like those whose hearts, right, are close to Islam, right? And this usually they will say the converts, right? But this is like in the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know, those people who are reluctant Muslims, right? They are kind of reluctant Muslims. They find they come into Islam and they don't really want to, right? So giving them zakat helps them embrace Islam, right? But in our time also, it's been said that it can be used for those who are converts who basically lose their jobs because of becoming a Muslim, and they lose their home because of becoming a Muslim. So their family kick them out. They lose their job because they put on a hijab, for example. Right? So for these people, becoming a Muslim is financially difficult. Right? To actually be a Muslim, right? It becomes difficult for them. So zakat is given to them to help them out. Right, for them to keep them in Islam, because otherwise, especially if they are contemplating on leaving Islam, because of the financial difficulty that they face in Islam, right? So giving them wealth to help them and to encourage them staying in Islam is permissible, right? So those who are close, they're near Islam, and then you have the riqab, right? The bondsmen. Right, so a slave that can buy his freedom. Okay, you can give zakat to this person. So of course, they don't exist anymore in our time, especially in Singapore. And then those who are in severe debt, right? So and all these things have conditions. Right? They all have conditions as to who are these people and which of them can actually take zakat. Right, the traveler. Right, who lost his wealth, right, abroad, and needs wealth to get back to his hometown. Okay, so not as any traveler, but specifically someone who went overseas. In the past, they used to go overseas, they would invest in business, then they might, lose all their wealth in their investment, and they have no money to actually get back to their hometown. Right, so these people they can actually take zakat. That day, I saw this case about these Indonesians that come to Singapore on all of their savings. They came to Singapore on, it's one of the scam cases. Really kasihan lah, mashallah. Really pitiful what they go through. So there was a story, I think was on Crime Watch, right? The story of these Indonesians, they came to Singapore on their savings, their complete savings. They came to Singapore to look for money, right? And they were promised by this fake, employment agency that they can find, job here in Singapore. So when they came to Singapore, they gave their money, and all of their money, in fact, it was all of their savings, to this employment agency to get themselves trained, in doing work, construction work in Singapore. Then they find out that this agency is actually bogus. It's completely, it's a whole scam. The whole thing is a scam. So then they're stuck in Singapore because they don't have the money to go back to Indonesia. And they can't work in Singapore because the certification that they got from this company was fake, was completely fake. Right? So they can't even, apply for a job, here in Singapore because they were completely squandered, right, by this scammers. It's all no, they have no heart, these people. Right? These are poor people from the kampong. Right? They're poor people from villages in Indonesia. So such people actually can get zakat. They can get zakat because why? They are travelers. They've come to our land, right? And they've lost all their wealth. They can't go back home because they have no money to buy a ticket, right, to go back to their country. Right? And they can't earn money here because they're foreigners. right? So they can actually receive the zakat. If you know of them, and you know who they are, they can actually apply for apply to receive zakat to get home, right? Because they are travelers, right, who have lost their wealth abroad and they need wealth to go back home. Right. So these are mashallah cases that actually happens up in our time. Mashallah. I'm just going to finish this off and then we will end our class. So Ibn Sabil and then fi sabilillah, right? In those who fight in the way of Allah, those who strive in the way of Allah. In the past, it used to be those who fight for jihad, but inshallah, they all have conditions, right? They all have conditions. It's not just like someone who can just give to anybody that is in debt can go and give them zakat. No, you have to go and actually look into the cases. Right? So most people, we will just entrust our zakat to the zakat collector, and zakat collector handles it for us, right? So unless of people who are really faqir or miskin and so on, then you can give out your zakat by yourself if you feel confident doing so. But if you don't feel confident, then you just give out the zakat collector, and they will do the work for you lah. And they will find the people who can receive zakat. Okay, I will stop there for today. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha.